Good morning. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, and awaken the consciousness. Boy, oh boy, what a week. What a week, huh, Benny?
It's blowing right by. We're approaching June quickly, but our sunshine has arrived.
I know, I see that. I know.
Super excited.
So for like, what, the next week, the next 10 days or something like that?
Here, We can turn off the heaters. We can put the blankets away.
You know,
open up the windows, vent the house.
Yeah, exactly. I'm such a pathetic pale face. I hate to say this. You know, I went out walking on Sunday and just like instantly was like red. Right?
Yeah.
Just instantly.
It is also truly amazing, of course, we're in the Seattle area, how people's attitudes completely do a 180 when the little orb comes up and stays a lot more brighter in the sky there. And loving it. And I'm getting a little darker, too. I like it. I had a little park time with the boys last weekend, so I want to continue that again.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's for sure. And I think that's one of the best things about the weather. It helps us get out, get outside. And with our families and our friends.
Energize, rejuvenate.
That's right. Just lay in that sun and soak it up.
That vitamin D.
That vitamin D. We need some of that. Anyway, welcome to the show. Like I said, I am Loretta Brown, and I'm the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area. We've been around. This is our 22nd year in business, and we've always have lots of excellent things going on over there. Reiki, of course. But there's all kinds of workshops, and there is other things besides Reiki. You know, I do sound healing, vibrational healing. And this coming Sunday, which is over the Memorial Day weekend, I will be doing a soundscape, a stress-reducing soundscape at Bala Yoga in Kirkland. And I will be bringing along some bowls with me, crystal bowl and Tibetan singing bowls. I'll be having a little meditation, and you will need to get your tickets through Bala Yoga. And I really encourage you to do that. Wear your yoga clothes. You're going to lie around in the Savasana position. That's just lying on your back or on your stomach or your side or sitting straight up, whatever you want to do. It's a lovely space, and I would love to meet all of you and have you join in with that. I am a firm believer in the power of sound and also the power of meditation. So we'll see you there Sunday evening. It starts at 7:30, goes for an hour and 15 minutes. Give yourself time to absorb everything, and you will sleep soundly and have amazing dreams, hopefully of past life and future life and love, because we always like love. Love's a good thing. Yeah. Also, you can sign up for everything at Reiki Oasis through schedule.reikioasis.com. Thank you to my amazing webmaster, Indigo Hawk, for all of his hard work. And we do have a Reiki Masterclass coming up June 10th. Reiki 1, for those that want to start your journey with Reiki, is Saturday, June 24th. Reiki 2 is Saturday, July 8th. And then we've got the Temple of the Divine Feminine, and we are working through some amazing things. That class is by invitation only. So if you're interested in being part of my monthly group of amazing women who are really going through the deep healing of the wounds of the womb, and we're going through, we study all kinds of things that the women in there could share with you. But you do need to send an email to me, Loretta Brown. You'll send it to Loretta@ReikiOasis.com, and we'll talk about getting you in the class. So it's not that hard to get in. It's just that I do screen it just a little bit. And, like I say, I hope you're enjoying the weather. You're enjoying each other. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot today because I have one of my favorite people in the planet on my show today, and I'm so thrilled to have her here. It's Dr. Carmen Bolter, and she is truly one of the most well-researched. I mean, she has spent her whole life studying things like the pyramids, where is Atlantis, what are we doing here? What does all this mean? And what I love about her is that she not only comes up with the questions that we all have, but then she goes after those and finds scientific evidence, because she's one of these people that it's like, how it is. There's so much information out there. Anybody can say anything. But as we all know, there's false news. And then there's the Loretta Brown Show.
I believe fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Thank
Bald
you.
face. Fake false. All of it.
In the bushes among the... No, never mind.
No. Hey, we're not going to go down that road.
You know, it's a linguistic thing, and we do have to be careful what we say. That's right. So Carmen Bolter is back today, and she is the director, producer, and writer of The Pyramid Code, a 5-episode documentary series that is aired on national TV. It's on Netflix. It's on Gaia TV. I think it's on Amazon Video, and it's probably all over the place by now. If you have not watched The Pyramid Code, I highly recommend it. You just need to do it. Come on. You're watching all of those other things. Watch something that's very well done, and it's going to give you some amazing information about Egypt. And she has just published a new edition of her groundbreaking book, Angels and Archetypes, an evolutionary map of feminine consciousness. I love that title. With original sets of angels and archetypes cards and runes. And she's working on an exciting new documentary, and this is exciting, a new documentary series called The New Atlantis. And so, Dr. Carmen Bolter, thank you for coming to the show. Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me on.
We're so glad we could get you back. I was filling in a little bit while we were waiting for you and reminding the listening audience that you have been on the show before. And those shows are archived. I highly recommend people go find them because, honestly, every word out of your mouth has me riveted to my seat. So I just love it. And the last time we talked, I think I had just come back from a trip to Egypt. I think you had come back from a trip finding some amazing information, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But I wanted to ask you, and just sort of lay a little groundwork for the listeners, how many countries have you visited, or do you even know, in your pursuit of this information, this ancient information?
60.
60
countries. Egypt counts as one, and I've been there 30 times.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, I'm trying to keep my country count up to my age. I'm barely almost there.
That's great. 60 countries. My goodness. And if I could say, what are you looking for? And it might be a big question. Yeah.
Well, I would say evidence of the sacred feminine, because I think that we're in a real crisis of values, living in patriarchy for 5,000 years, and the agenda of the patriarchy is to erase evidence of everything other than itself. However, matriarchal cultures still exist, and they're largely misinterpreted. But if I'm looking for anything, that's what it is.
That's fascinating. What got you going on this journey?
I started having past life memories as a little girl, and I was also highly intuitive, and I guess you call that precocious, too, when you're 3. Oh. And as, even in my youth, people would say things, I'd go, no, that's not how it works. And I'm like, who's talking to me? Like, well, why do I think I know that that's not how it works? And so I just didn't accept the status quo, the way things were taught in school. I just knew that there was a whole other reality. And I don't know how I knew, but I started traveling, young with my family, and then went to Europe with my sister when I was 15, and done an awful lot of things by myself and in pursuit of this.
I love that. I love that comment you made about being precocious. Yeah, I remember being told I was precocious too, or too big for my britches, which that's a different conversation. But so you really, the past lives, now I do believe in past lives. I know many people wonder about that. But it's my understanding that you not only had information from past lives, but you had verifiable past lives. Is that correct?
Yes, and I stopped counting my lives when I was about 33. I had already counted 85 of them. And so I think that pretty much I wouldn't be seeking out places if I hadn't already been there. There's a certain familiarity. And countries are big, and you don't go everywhere in a country. You go to certain places. But so I say we're just revisiting our cellular memory and trying to connect the dots.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm hearing what you're saying, a familiarity. So you're sort of drawn there, and then when you're there, you're like, for some reason, this is familiar. It's a little bit undefinable, right? Why do you think it is that, we talk an awful lot about the pyramids of Egypt, which are fascinating. We do want to touch on that subject, but it's my understanding that pyramids are being discovered all over the world that were largely unknown. What is catalysting that right now? What's going on?
Well, that's an excellent question. Okay, if the pyramids were there before the last worldwide flood, then as the water receded, it would have left silt over the top of them, which would have, and it could have been as much as 3 feet of it, which is like soil and enough to grow vegetation. So a lot of these pre-Diluvian pyramids are covered in trees, but the trees are all different heights. So if we could, take a helicopter and shave them all at the same height, you could see that it was a straight-sided pyramid under there. And there are people like Dr. Sam Osmanagic that I have the utmost respect for, who has, made his career about finding pyramids all over the world. And there's a lot of pyramids in a lot of places, and they're different constructions. They perhaps were built in different time frames, but I think they all fall into certain categories of doing something for what's called geomancy, which is like the ley lines, the acupressure points of the planet, and they're actually serving an important purpose, and we're so far away from that way of thinking that we're busy destroying the planet, not trying to hold it together.
So, are you saying that that the pyramids, and I just heard you say there's pyramids all over the world, and maybe perhaps built at different times, but maybe around the same time. I really don't know. But what I heard you say is that there's a possibility that the pyramids are helping to stabilize the planet, or is that the right wording? Or yeah,
I think so. I think that they're tapping into telluric energy and cosmic energy and the exchange between the two. And so they very definitely would have been here more than 10, 12,000 years ago. And that's why the Bosnian pyramids, for example, are covered in trees, as I was saying. So, yes, and one of the key past life memory was being on an evacuation committee when there was advanced knowledge that Atlantis was going to sink. And what were we going to do to preserve the stuff? What were we going to do to help the people survive? And what could we do to stabilize the planet? And that led in that past life memory to a concerted effort where various groups went to various places on the planet and started pyramid building.
So, because I've thought about this too, like, was Atlantis in some way like seeded or moved around the planet? There's a lot of talk about the fact that perhaps they might have gone to like Mayan civilizations or Egyptian or things like that. So, yeah.
I've come to think of it as a third-party hypothesis. How is it that the Sumerians, the Chinese, the Vedic Indians, the Egyptians, and the Mayans all have the same kind of civilizing culture and propensity for commerce and sacred geometry and pyramid building? Because it could well be that they all had similar ancestors, so perhaps they haven't been talking to each other in recent times. But that's the other thing, is that because patriarchy wants us to think we're 5,000, 6,000 years old, then it's not fashionable or academically correct to look further back. And so that's why one of the key reasons why we're so lost in terms of understanding the distant past. But an awful lot went on the planet before that.
Yeah, I remember because I was raised with the concept that we were only 5,000 to 6,000 years old, and then several years back, I went to Turkey and slept in caves that were at least 10,000 years old, and kind of boggled my mind a little bit. But I'm hearing you say that we could be a lot older than that.
Well, there's people like Michael Cremo, who wrote the book Forbidden Archaeology, and you can look online on YouTube and see all the different interviews he did 20 years ago, where he was just being badgered by anybody who he was being interviewed by. And I think that, that the ideas have opened up a little bit. But he's claiming skeletons that are 1 million years old, and giants as well. That's another thing. They're finding giants with descended skulls all over the planet as well. And so, again, there's been a strong agenda to hide that from everyone. But, now that we've got internet, things are hidden in plain sight. Now, there's a lot of distortion when it comes to giants, and a man standing as big as an ear of a giant. Well, then that being would have to be like 200 feet high. Well, that's not quite what we were talking about. But there's a lot of misinformation that's meant to discredit things that are coming to light.
That's actually one of the questions I wanted to bring up, was about the elongated skulls and the giants, and also the short people, I suppose. I don't know what you want to call them. But, when I was in Egypt, and I went to the Cairo Museum, and, of course, a lot of people have been to the King Tut exhibits, which, traveled around, and they do come to Seattle and other places in the country. They show Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and, Meritaten, one of the daughters, with these elongated skulls. And are these elongated skulls are they all over the world? And what is that about? Can you comment on that?
Yes, they are all over the world, and what they try to say in Egypt is that they're artistically done. But no, what happens with a skull like that is that there's more room for an enlarged pineal gland, which is the psychic center, the connection between the cosmic and the telluric, the earthly. And that when they were very well developed in that way, they had a larger brain capacity. And who knows if they were starseeds or whatever. But there's many, many skeletons of giants with descended skulls. And there's people like Marcy K. Moore who are reconstructing these skulls and putting the skin back on in a software program, 3D software program, and bringing them to light. So I've been working with her to recreate the energy field and the personality, if you will, of some of these descended skulls that were found, and the ones that we've been working on are from Bolivia. But she's also traveled to Vancouver Island in Canada. And Lucy is someone who was the last living real person with a descended skull in the area in British Columbia, Canada. And so she's been welcomed by the tribes there, and she's doing some remarkable work about it. But she's not the only one. Klaus Donna has had a lot of exposure to descended skulls and giants as well in Bolivia and Peru and Ecuador, all over. So this is no secret anymore.
I've heard of Lucy, and of course Vancouver Island is just north of Seattle here. So I find that fascinating. I wish I had visual here with my radio show so we could look at it, but people can possibly wait for that to come out in your new Atlantis. I hope so. Yeah. So when we talk about those elongated skulls, we talk about giants. We talk about people whose height is shorter than what we currently are. Are these, and this may be a conjecture because I do know you base things on science, and people talk about the aliens, like, well, the aliens came to Earth, or, is it pre-Adamites? Is it aliens? Is there any way to know at this point?
Well, that word alien is completely distorted, and because I like to think of it as starseed. Mm-hmm. Like it makes sense to me, and I've been researching UFOs, since I was 12, and I pretty much accepted way back then that something happened and someone was visiting. But in some ways, we're all aliens. We're all starseed. We're all from somewhere else. Now, the part about the small people, as you say, dwarfs, whatever you want to call them, my understanding is when the last flood happened, there were a couple of races of beings that were wiped out. And the little people were one, and giants were another. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't obscure evidence here and there. But I think that in Lemuria, there was, lots of small people, dwarfs, and people who were, 3 feet tall. And so even in the turkey find that we discussed last time, there is a miniature skeleton there. Not skeleton, pardon me, mummy. And it was confiscated by the government. But I know the sister of the woman who had it in her house.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah. So these sorts of things are big concerted efforts have been made to attempt to hide them. But it makes sense that we don't see a lot of evidence because the whole race was wiped out with the last global flood.
So let's fill in some of the spaces here because, when I was in Egypt, I think it's about a year and a half ago or so, I actually was at King Tut's tomb and met with a man there who was an official person of some kind who was talking about that they had possibly found Nefertiti's burial chamber or her mummy in a chamber next to King Tut's tomb. And what do you think about this? What are your comments about this?
Well, I'm sorry, but I think it's utter nonsense, A, because King Tut's tomb was hermetically sealed, and that would mean that Nefertiti had to die the same day, which is unlikely. B, in 2009, Joanne Fletcher claimed to have found Nefertiti. Well, they already made the announcement that they found her. I didn't think that was true. I don't think we're ever going to find her. And C, King Tut's tomb is actually very small and unceremonious compared to KV 55, Ramses II, 75 rooms. Thing's only a couple of rooms. So if you look at the artist's rendition on the King Tut wing in the museum on either side of the door by the mummy room, you'll see the shape and the size of the rooms and the size of the doorways. And when they found the King Tut exhibit, it was all shoved in there like in a warehouse kind of thing. The doors where they're claiming the secret chamber is that Nefertiti could be in are the doors to where the stuff was that they took out. So this is a lot of propaganda to try to get people all excited. So I don't think they're ever going to find her, A, and they keep saying they already found her. So they got a group of professionals together to have a roundtable discussion about whether Nefertiti could be in there. And I'm like, why not open the door and look? They make all this hoo-ha. For what reason, I don't know, but I think we have to open the idea to logic. So I took a superimposition of where they claimed this room was and put it over the top of this artist's rendition, and the door's in the same place. So they're making a lot of sensationalism over nothing, if you ask me.
And I have to ask, why do you think they're doing that? It might be speculation. I won't put you on the spot there, but what do you think that's all about? Why would they be saying we found her or et cetera, and when you really have something to tell us that, maybe about Nefertiti and Akhenaten and maybe the findings that we alluded to on our last show?
Okay, let's put it this way. Mm-hmm. We haven't had peace on the planet since the Amarna period, which flattened the hierarchies, I say. So it wasn't the king had everything and everybody else was a slave and people had to work and give the king all their money. It was much more balanced and matriarchally endowed, if you will, with creativity. And, so people still felt beloved if they were the, caretaker of the children or the midwife or the artist or that sort of thing. So it wasn't, this lower class and this upper class, which is what we've been trying to model ourselves on. And it's terribly broken and it's terribly unfair. And, the 1% of the 1% get everything and everybody else suffers. And so anything that's going to come into conflict with that as a world view is threatening to the powers that pretend, and they don't want anything of the kind of, fairness and equality and beauty and all that. So the Amarna period was a beautiful thing, but it was also very threatening to the patriarchal aspects of Egypt at the time, which I'll refer to as the Amun priesthood, and we still say Amen, but Amun means darkness. And so everything that's been said about Nefertiti and Akhenaten, particularly Akhenaten, is that he's crazy, he's deformed, that King Tut had a club foot and a hair lip, and they're using all these medical models to say that they were insane and then they went to the one God. No, Catholicism went to the one God. There's plenty of evidence that Nefertiti and Akhenaten kept the groupings of archetypal energies, both male and female, that they saw as gods and goddesses, but they're archetypal energies. And so it's somehow terribly threatening to a world that wants power over and destruction to think that people could have lived with a value system that supported everyone. That's threatening to them. So they don't want that story to come out.
That makes perfect sense. And it also goes back to the comment that you made earlier between, the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy, and also the times that we're in right now, and your search for the divine feminine, which is a beautiful work that you're doing. The story of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, there's a lot of speculation around it. And, of course, King Tut, how did King Tut die? And what do you think what's your opinion of the 2009 results of the DNA testing done under the surveillance of Zahiwas, showing that Tut died of malaria?
Again, 100% nonsense. And it kind of puts me on the spot a little bit to say what I think. But I watched for 12 years. When I really care about this whole situation and the DNA and all of that. And I was doing graduate work in anthropology and archaeology at the time during that period. And they were using the Y chromosome, not the X chromosome. You have to be looking at the mitochondrial DNA to see the lineage. And they made a lab in the basement of the museum, and they closed all the other DNA labs in Egypt. And first there was a Japanese team, and then Zahi went, no, security, and he kicked them out. And then Scott Woodward from Brigham Young University was given the project, and he's there with the National Geographic cameras ready to drill into the tooth to get the DNA. No, national security, shut the whole thing down. So I even flew to Denver from Canada to get the results, to hear him speaking. And he got up on the stage and said, they shut us down before we got it, so we'll talk about results of what we found in mummies in Peru. So I could see that they wanted Akhenaten to be Tut's father, and I don't think he is. I think he was part of the royal family. I think that there was a shortage of boy babies because, and it was the patriarchal era through that, because the patriarchal Egypt is the whole dynastic period, but this was a pocket of something that was a little bit more balanced. But Morris Cotterell will tell you about different solar flare activity that could cause the male children to be more fragile and not survive. So I think that Tut was raised to be of the Aten, as well as understanding the Amun, because the Amun priesthood was getting 50% of everybody's harvest, and lining their pockets and, making people promise their salvation, get the salvation from the priest, kind of like the religion does now. And they didn't like this balanced thing. So Tut was raised in the North Palace with the daughters of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, so he would have been there like their siblings, but I don't think that they were, I just don't get it, that he would have been Akhenaten's son. But when the Amun priesthood found out that he actually, his soul and his being was of the Aten, they knocked him off. They got a hole in his head. And then there was no place to bury him, and there was a cache of mummies inside this small tomb, and my understanding is they whipped them all out and put a bunch of furniture from Amarna and sealed closed, put blue lotus flowers over the top of them and closed it. So I think he died because they killed him, because they were threatened by the idea that he was keeping the the idea of the light and the Aten alive. And so, but one of the things, it's Africa. So all of them, the Isis would have been black, the Black Madonna. If Tut was Akhenaten's son, even though they say Akhenaten was crazy and distorted and disfigured and all that stuff, it would have made Tut white.
Yeah.
I mean, they got it all sewn up.
Yeah, I'm following that. I'm actually following that. My brain is absorbing all of that, Carmen. That's amazing. That also explains the fast burial of Tut in a very small tomb that was already there. So, my listeners, this is the Loretta Brown Show. My guest today is Dr. Carmen Bolter, and she is the director, producer, and writer of The Pyramid Code. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about her finds in Turkey and the new Atlantis, so don't go away. Anyway, welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show. My exciting guest today is Dr. Carmen Bolter, who is the director, producer, and writer of The Pyramid Code. You need to watch it. And she's working on an exciting new documentary series, which I can't wait to see, called The New Atlantis. And Carmen, I would like to go directly to what it is that you left as a cliffhanger last time, which is what you had just discovered, or maybe you hadn't just discovered, but you were letting us know that you had just discovered some sort of finds around this Nefertiti Akhenaten Tut issue.
Well, there has been a lot of treasure hunting in Turkey, and along the Silk Road, things were hidden. And, I think that there was even from the Knights Templar and the Knights of Malta, treasures were amassed, and then people were killed, and the treasure was taken, and then somebody else pick them up, give me your stuff, and the treasure kept going from hand to hand. And then there came a point where I think it all had to be hidden. And so these treasure maps became the thing. And so all through these hills in the south of Turkey are these arrows, and turn here, and when you see the big rock, and you go over the rock face and turn left, and you go up the, and there are these treasure maps that are basically indicating where some of these things have been hidden. And so the maps themselves probably have as much value as the finds. And somehow I have been privy to 147 pictures and 9 videos of what was found. And given my book, Angels and Archetypes, an Evolutionary Map of Feminine Consciousness, these things are all matriarchal. There aren't weapons. It's not arrowheads. There's a tremendous amount of gold, including suitcase-style boxes full of gold bricks. But in pertaining to Nefertiti and Akhenaten, I find it interesting because they basically were saying that they canceled all the gods and went to one god. I don't know who the writers get that, and then repeat it over and over again. But in this particular stash, which is all gold, it could be gold leaf covering wooden statues, if you will, but every, Thoth is there, and Sekhmet, and Isis, and all of them, they're all there, Anubis, and it goes on. And so it's not one god. What are they talking about? So if Nefertiti had fled, that's the narrative that I'm giving it is that when the Amun priesthood were coming to get Akhenaten, everybody knew that it was over for the Amarna period and the peace and all that. And so I think Nefertiti was escorted out and was invited to bring things that would replicate, would tell the story of them, because there would be so much distortion in the future. And I say that's what this stash is. So there's Amenhotep II and Amenhotep III, Akhenaten's father. There is a sarcophagus that rivals King Tut, and you don't find many sarcophagi in all of Egypt, in the museum or anywhere else, that look like Tut's, that are gold, like that, with the inlaid jewels. And it's unbelievable. It's got the Senate game in it, which was ones like that were found in King Tut's tomb, it's a game, but it's also cosmic. So there's wormholes and analemas, which is the pattern of how the sun appears on a daily basis, and it's all very useful in terms of the energy work that they were doing and the cosmic cycles. So
you're saying
now,
all of this... Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. You're saying all of this that you just mentioned was found in a stash in Turkey, in the south of Turkey. Oh, okay. Please continue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so these researchers actually scratched the back of the statue and got the gold off and got a piece of wood from the statue itself and had it carbon dated. And carbon-14 typically makes things look younger than they are. The older something is, the more the plus or minus distortion is. But now if you thought last time was a cliffhanger, the date came back at 11,500 years ago.
What?
Well, that means that all this stuff was intact before Amarna, but they didn't make it at Amarna. Well, now what are we talking about? Are we talking pre-flood, Atlantean? So then, it took me a long time to process this and to think. Well, does that mean that these things were inherited by Nefertiti and Akhenaten in the 18th dynasty from Atlantis?
Wow. Okay. So, I've got to repeat this back because my brain's trying to catch up with you. And I know my listeners are probably going, what did she just say? So I'm going to say this back and please correct it. But if I'm hearing you correctly, your information, your theory, and based upon your findings, because you don't ever just say something, is that Nefertiti fled Egypt and took these statues and all of these things that you mentioned, the sarcophagus, everything, and fled to Turkey, and now this is being found, and these statues, these gold-covered statues of the gods and goddesses, are dated for at least 11,500 years ago, which is pre-flood. And the connection there is with ancient Atlantis, which we're all fascinated with. Absolutely.
Yep, you heard it. That's what I said.
That is just so exciting. Now, you say you have 147 pictures and 9 videos. Are you currently filming in Turkey? Are you able to get in there?
Nope.
No.
And the people who actually found it, who I was talking to at length, they haven't been able to get back there either. And so right around that time, I was waiting for the green light to book a ticket to go and film, because these photographs they have are just somebody swinging a cell phone around. It's very, very, very poor quality. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, the Turkish border is closing. And then all of a sudden, all these refugees are coming in from Syria. Mm-hmm. And things have not stabilized since.
So is this...
And so who knows if there's this... we're talking to the day here.
Yeah.
That I was waiting to book my ticket, and then all of a sudden, they were kicking the Americans out of Turkey before they even knew the refugee crisis was going to start. And days later, all of a sudden, there's refugees pouring in across the Turkish border right down there.
So is this evidence that will go into your new series, the New Atlantis? Is this part of the connection then?
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I didn't sign a gag order or anything, and I have these pictures, and I've cropped them, and,
Yeah.
I've got them. I can use them. They're not fabulous pictures. They're not high resolution or anything, but I still have them, and I'm allowed to use them. So, yes, I've been speaking and at first I was like, I didn't know what to say about it, or it took me a long time to think it through and to start getting the timeline. So I don't think that Nefertiti actually traveled with the artifacts. I think she probably was kept undercover, similar to Mary Magdalene when, Jesus was crucified, and then, she left and she was protected and ended up in the south of France. I think these are similar stories when, patriarchal ways of being and thinking come and get the person who's got the 12-strand DNA and mess them up.
Yeah. So why do you think that we all are so fascinated with Atlantis? Because we are.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because more books and screenplays and comic books and things have been, written about Atlantis than any other subject. Well, because I think that it was a time where the value system did support all for one and one for all. It wasn't good for everyone. It wasn't good at all. I think the riches were prolific. They had an abundance of precious woods, and they used aromatherapy, and they had, all kinds of metals that they could make instruments out of, and, they were very peaceful. And for some reason, now, Atlantis lasted for more than one precessional cycle, which is 25,900 and some years. Mm. And so, of course, we go through the Golden Age and down into the Iron Age and the dark and the light and the dark and the light. So in all of Atlantis, over the period of time that it's speculated to have existed, there was time for some shenanigans and some negativity coming in there. But business that they were doing experiments between humans and animals, and God sent the flood because there was corruption, that is another big, fat lie. It's a big story. Who is doing genetic manipulation now? Have you seen pictures of a human ear growing on the back of a rat? Mm-hmm. You think we don't have enough corruption? If corruption is causative of a flood, you think we shouldn't be buried under miles of water by now? Like this points the finger that the Atlanteans were the weird ones and we're the smartest we've ever been. It works, though. That's the thing. People believe it. If you repeat something over and over and over and over again and keep the evidence of Atlantis hidden, then people can't put the story back together. Mm-hmm. And even so, I've got footage from 15 countries. I've been working on this for 5 years. I don't have enough funding to finish it so far. I do have a GoFundMe campaign /The New Atlantis. And it takes a lot of money to do this. And I spent all my own money on the Pyramid Code, never got it back. So, now we live in this distorted age of everything online is, free for the taking. And I'm sitting on a pretty strong story. And so far, I need some support to finish it. I'm going to finish it somehow.
Yeah, you are. I'm going to put a little plug in for you. For the listeners, if you want to help get this story out, you want to see the new Atlantis, and you want to have an idea of Dr. Carmen Bolter's work, like I say, take a look at the Pyramid Code. It is top-notch, wonderful information. And if you want to help out, everything helps, and I'm plugging this for her. She didn't ask me to do it. But go to gofundme.com/thenewatlantis and help out, because, we are in an age where everybody is like, oh, everything's free. But you have a story that I have not heard from anybody else, and I really trust you as a scientist, as a researcher, and as a woman who is following her destiny. I'm just going to say it that way. So, I got to ask you this, and you've already kind of touched on it. So if Atlantis did exist, and it had this beautiful, peaceful civilization, which I believe we'd all love to have, what happened to Atlantis? I mean, did it just sink like people say? Did it blow up? What happened? Uh-oh. There's always a cliffhanger, listeners. We just lost her. Betty's going to try to get her back.
One more time. Be right back.
That was absolutely the most wonderful cutoff I've ever heard in my life. And while we're waiting for Benny to reconnect, Dr. Carmen Bolter is actually in Spain right now. And so we are going back and forth over the ocean. And sometimes the connections do get cut off. And so while we're waiting to bring her back, she is Dr. Carmen Bolter, and she has done the Pyramid Code. She's working on the new Atlantis. She could really use your help funding that at gofundme.com/thenewatlantis. And I don't always put in such a big plug for anybody, but we are in a time where we have this balancing of matriarchy and patriarchy. We have a lot of things going on out there, as you all know, and I do believe that we are under a time of what I call the truth, or the shining of the light of truth. And that light of truth helps us come together with compassion. It helps us help each other. That's what it's all about. So I'll just check with Benny.
Let's try.
Carmen?
Yep, I'm back.
It was
I've never had a call cut like this So in the whole time I've been here in Spain, so I think there's funny business going on.
Someone's got to be the first to do it. Yeah, someone's got to be the first.
You know, the memories of Atlantis, and we'd all love to go back to a peaceful time. Continue with that question.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And my question was, and I do believe there's probably something going on. I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
And so where is Atlantis? Where is it located on the planet, Carmen?
You're breaking up. Honestly, I mean, I've only had successful phone calls with this connection. Can you ask again, please?
Yes, I'll ask, where is Atlantis on the planet?
Where is Atlantis itself?
Yes. Yes.
You're breaking up. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
You can hear me?
I can.
So I think you're asking me where Atlantis would be, and I think it ended up being a worldwide seafaring culture over time. And what we have the propensity to do is to just pick an A, B, C, D. The teacher's got the right answer, and then you say, okay, this is where it was and when. But I think that it went through many phases, and as my understanding is there was at least 3 major destructions, possibly 4, that spanned tens of thousands of years apart. 85,000 years ago, 58,000 years ago, and 33, I think, and 13, you know, so lots of big spans. And so, but really, there, you know, lots of people say, well, it didn't exist, or it's in Antarctica, and they're trying to say that Nazi and Atlantis are in the same sentence, and, you know, there's lots and lots of distortion, and I think we have to understand how to unpack things logically. But there's only one place on the planet where everything that Plato said exists. And when we look for something that, you know, if it supposedly went underwater, well, then Santorini, that's still there, can't be a candidate if it's still there. And so we get told things, and it's like it's a distortion, and it's a contradiction. And if we're told the same thing over and over again, then we go, okay, fine, it was Santorini, whatever, it's Antarctica. But Nazi and Atlantis don't go together in the same sentence. And so, an alien and all that stuff. So I think that because there's so much obscurity around Atlantis, we just grab onto whatever we can hear, and whatever's repeated often enough, anyway, is considered to be accepted. Okay. And we don't want Atlantis to be Asian. And so, again, just like we don't want King Tut to be, black. So actually, Java has all the characteristic features, 100% of what Plato said. Places like Troy have 20%. So you just go down, check. What did Plato say? How big was this high altiplano? And it was wrapped around with mountains, and the rivers were here, and here. And so there's been an awful lot of work done now, but again, it's not popularized. So I say Grand Central Atlantis is Java. I'm comfortable with that now. Mm. And then it became worldwide and seafaring, and a lot of the places that people think Atlantis could have been a colony. But colonies, would have developed their own characteristic features and clothing and music and that sort of thing, which is why I think that the Babylonians and the Mayans and the Egyptians have different headdresses, have slightly different patterns, but the knowledge of sacred geometry, as I mentioned before, and civilizing culture and commerce and all of that is, so I say they all had common ancestors that would have been Atlantean.
That's a great answer. We have just a couple minutes left, and it's difficult to even ask a question. Could you briefly comment on pyramid power and crystals?
Well, I don't know if you're talking and if you can hear me. And I know that our hour is running short here in 3 minutes.
Yes.
So you said you could hear me last time. Yeah, so what I'm saying isn't something that I've heard from anybody else. I've been piecing this together through my own research. It's too easy to just make stuff up and say there was a rainbow pyramid underneath the ground and, the cosmic wormhole and all that. If you can't verify it with something concrete, it's just a story. And we can watch all the fantasies we want. And I think that people are really looking to resonate with something that makes sense to them and that they can ground. And I think what the Pyramid Code has done for people is give them a sense of, yes, I knew it. I had a sense that was true. And so.
All right. So, everybody, just thanks so much for listening in. We do apologize for the difficulty with communication, but, sometimes it happens when we're trying to connect overseas. And my guest today was Dr. Carmen Bolter. She is the director, producer, and writer of The Pyramid Code. She is working on the new Atlantis. If you want to help her out with that, please go to gofundme.com/the new Atlantis. And my guest next week will be Michael Tellinger. We'll be talking about Ubuntu. And he's on his world tour and the ancient civilizations and artifacts in South Africa. So we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.